Welcome back to Divine Ethereal Beings. It has been a little while, we're not gonna lie. I was just looking at our dates and I thought, holy shit, it's been a while since we've definitely made up some of these. Excited to be back and doing this today. So today we are going to talk about a little bit more, we've had a couple questions about doing the work and explaining a little bit more on that. And we're going to do our best because it can be a little tough sometimes when it's a little bit more generalized to an extent, because doing the work for all of us is a little bit different, just different places in life, different journeys, all the things, different resources. It's not a one size fits all type of deal. So we're going to do our best to try and explain maybe a little bit more when we're referencing in other podcast episodes and all the things about when we're talking about doing the work. And I guess what we're really talking about is doing the self reflection and things for ourselves to help better move the energy and process whatever that's looking like for the moments and situations that are happening, I guess is really my only term that's really coming to me. And if you've got a better explanation, please let it rip, because that's about all I can come up with.
So, if we come at it from the angle of the fact that we are a soul, a consciousness that is choosing to come have this experience in a physical body here on the earth, we are choosing to do so for our growth and expansion, or our learning, as we might say in human form. We want to have an experience and learn about it from all angles and all the ways and know, that was a funny look. Everything okay?
Yeah, something random just popped up on my computer. It's all good.
Okay. So, it's important to keep that in mind when we talk about this topic and subject. And so, because two individuals could be engaging in the same experience, they might be here to learn completely different things from that experience and about that experience. Not to mention, just to use us as examples again, we all process and do things differently. Dayna is here and she does things very internally in her world, and she processes very internally. And so her work is different. Where for me, it's natural to be external. And this is even supported when you look at our astrological charts and things like that. And so the work is different for her versus me. Now, there may be similarities in the work, like both involve meditating, right? Both involve self-reflection. It involves looking at your belief structures, learning about yourself. How does our mind work? How does our nervous system work? How does our body work, right? And the triggers for Dayna are going to be different than my triggers, right? So again, there are so many variables that impact doing the work, what it looks like, and what it means for every individual. So yeah, that hopefully helps give some context.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. Like, there's a baseline, like you said, like meditation and becoming present moment, going for a walk, whatever it is. Like, there's a baseline for tools, I guess, but how those tools might work for every individual is where it's going to vary. Because it's funny you brought up like us being so opposite in the ways that we like external and internal processing, because we are. I like to call us the yin and yang symbol, because that's exactly almost what we are. But we complement each other in such good ways in that aspect as well, because if something for whatever reason does happen in my external field and I feel like I have to have a bit of a conversation, you are one of my favorite people to do that with, because you're externally good at processing. I am not so much, right? My words often don't come out of me. All I have is these frequencies and feelings, and I don't know how to explain them. So the best way for me is to go inwards, go into meditative states, and start to get an understanding from a very higher perspective of myself, so I can come back into more of that human consciousness and being like, okay, I got what I needed out of that and I've let it go, whether I do choose to analyze it or not, or I don't maybe always need to. But I am not very good at always verbalizing the things. And, I've had some that are like, wow, you just don't really talk about yourself very much, or you don't really give much out there. And I always tell people I don't know how. I actually don't really know how to do that, because that's not my access point to do my processing, right? So, but like you said, with the tools, there's always a baseline, right? That's why a lot of people will share, hey, this is what's working for me, but it's still up to ourselves to figure that out. Okay, is this working for me? Or is there something better that I could be using for myself to figure out the pieces?
And along those lines, one of the, especially if like when you're just starting out, a big thing is not only like what's working for you, but like what are you actually willing to do? I had people telling me to journal from day one to this day, 10 years later. I don't have very much journaling done. But that it and yes, journaling when I do it is powerful and it is a great process. However, my go-to is, I mean, even if it's leaving myself a voice note just to get it out and then listen to it later, because often all of my wisdom and insights come in that external verbal processing, right? So it's also like finding the thing that engages your mind enough to allow everything to trickle in and all the wisdom and higher knowledge to come in the background. And so I think that for you, that very much is, I'm going to go meditate and expand into the universe, right? But it's not that way for everyone.
Mm-mm. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, why I hate when someone tries to say it's one size fits all, because that is such a bullshit term to begin. Like, let's really look at the t-shirt. Do you really think that t-shirt is one size fit all? Like, come on. No. You can't label shit like that because this whole world's not a one size fit all. We are all externally creating something from ourselves. So everybody's got on rose colored glasses that are all going to be different shades. And that's the beautiful piece about this is like, that's why continuously I was being told, especially through parts of my journey, like, remember, everybody's a specific, unique puzzle piece. There will be things that can be a baseline, but then from there, it might be different in the way it affects you or works for you or this or that, right? Because everybody's coming in here in different levels, different timelines, different things. And I think that's the beautiful piece about that, though, is like we're all different.
So to keep on that whole one size fits all t-shirt size, they're showing me how like different brands of clothes, the same size is not the same size. Like a size 8 is not the same across, like there's no brand that it's equivalent in. They're all different. They're all a slightly different style, even if they're mimicking each other, copying each other, there is still a variation. So you are, as a soul, your own brand. There is
Quite
no,
literally.
there is no other brand like you on this planet ever. And it's like, are you choosing the 70s flare bootleg, style? Are you choosing like high waters, right? Like, and so the point is like that evolves. So the work evolves with you, right? Your brand and your style adjusts and changes as you go. And yet there's likely still some underpinnings that are you. So for me, it's being external. For you, it's being internal, right? Like those pieces aren't going to change, even if our size 8 modifies as we move through life. So anyway, that just
No, it's great. It's a great analogy. And the other one they just gave me was if you could imagine like someone being a creative artistic person painting and they're only using the same paints over and over and over and over again because they've gotten really good with those paints. It's the same type of deal. Like you might find things that work really well, but remembering that the energy on earth as well is always shifting. So if something shifts that changes the way these tools or the things have been feeling, they feel like they've been working. Well, you got to think of the same thing as like the painter decides, hey, actually, I'm going to try out this new color or these new paints because they seem like there's something here that might work really well, or create something different that evolves me in that way of being a painter, or if you're looking at it for yourself, evolving and growing still. Because the thing is we're not supposed to get comfortable to a point of not wanting to try new things anymore either, even when it comes to doing the inner work. So there is always, again, as they will always say, there is no end game. And when there's no end game to the tools and things that you can use as your own inner work as well.
They're bringing me to this topic or thought or visualization or concept that is going to demonstrate that. And then it's also just going to be something good to bring up and talk about. So there's like the energy work, right? There's a ton of different modalities of energy work. And, both of us are Reiki Master certified and yada, yada, yada. And that kind of has a specific look or feel for how you do Reiki, right? Yet we have experiences that we are having being channels where we are no longer we're still a conduit by default of being the physical person in the realm for the beings to come through, but it's different. It's a whole nother level and type of energy work that's wanting to come through and wanting to evolve, where it's like there really is no part of us as humans that are involved in it per se. So, I mean, clearly you need to have done the work to have the discernment and things like that of what's coming through you and all of that good stuff. But yeah, it's just another example of the work evolving, whether that's internal work, energy work, the tools we have, what's available out there, the different blueprints for humans available, astrology, human design, gene keys, like you name it, right? There's a ton. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's just a baseline, like you said, because it's always evolving and changing. And yeah, right down to our core brand, maybe we will always have that essence, but it doesn't mean that essence doesn't change and evolve and grow. I mean, you know what's interesting? It just brought me back to when it's almost like apocalyptic when you have like nuclear things happen or things like that. And so like these spills and everything that have happened in certain places in Japan and whatnot more recently, it's interesting because you look at the plants and animals that now exist there are very, very different than what used to be there. And yes, there's been this notion of energetic change from maybe a chemical or some kind of reaction, but that's almost a great reference to timelines and how things can shift, right? And something else gets created out of that. And can you accept that being, something new and exciting, or are you going to see it as something fearful? So again, that's also part of doing your work is like you said, the discernment of being able to decipher for yourself too. Does this feel good? Okay, maybe I don't feel great, but is it just because I'm uncomfortable or is this truly not feeling good for me?
is it feeding the kraken or the unicorn?
Exactly. Exactly that.
I need to
100%.
get some context for that. So they were just referring to uh, an individual's fear in this life as this person's kraken. Previously, they've referred to all of us running around being chased by something, and we're unwilling to turn around and look at what that is. And it's a magical unicorn if we would just turn around and look at what we're so scared of. In this particular situation, though, it's actually like this person has created a kraken that is following them through lifetimes. And if it's a kraken because they refuse to turn around and look at it, and so it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger by their choices, and that is their choice. There's nothing wrong with it, but this is an individual who just is really unwilling to do the work on any level. And this person is older in human form, physical form, and that's okay. Like we all get to have that choice, right? So yeah, doing the work, like you can make it as like magical and imaginative, or you can keep it really like in your comfort zone, right? Like breath work, somatic work, whatever. Like there's so many layers to it. What's going to move the energy? What's going to bring you into present awareness with your unconscious? And what then, once it's conscious, then you can utilize these other modalities and things to help process and move it. So that's kind of two aspects of the work too. Like how do you become aware of what work is needed type of deal?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why self-awareness is so important when it comes to this. Because if you do not know what your own energy even feels like, you cannot even figure out what is actually yours to be dealt with and what actually just needs to be let go that's everybody else's shit. So that's the thing about it is until you get to know yourself. So that's always step number one. Okay, well, how do you get to know yourself? Well, we, I believe, have an entire episode that is about self-awareness on our podcast already, and you utilizing the pieces of questioning and starting to get to know who you truly are. Asking your team for some help. Hey, I want some space so I can start to understand what I feel like alone in my own energy. Once you figure that out, then again, this is why working with our teams in spiritual, higher self, God, source, universe, whatever the hell you want to call it, there's no right or wrong here, but being able to recognize that you are just a fraction of what is actually going on in the world and the universe, and that there's so much more to you. So analyzing and remembering, okay, if I recognize my own energy, I can then ask for a little bit of help from the energetics, higher self, team, whatever, as we mentioned before, creating space now so that when something is brought up that's not serving you, it'd be a memory, an emotion, whatever that might be, then you'll recognize for yourself, oh, I see that's coming from somewhere in me. If it's not feeling like it's coming from within you, that's your body saying, man, we picked out some shit on the side of the road. Can we please just let this go? Because we're not making any sense of where this is coming from, right?
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different pieces of doing the work. Like you said, you gotta, how do you figure that out? Well, we just talked about, you can actually ask for the help to be brought forward, whatever in this moment is not serving me, to allow me to get to my next step or whatever I'm working towards. What do I need to let go of? Yeah, great. Now you've got it. Well, how do you let go of it? Well, this is when you come back to those modalities that are working, enter different energetic works. Maybe it's walking it off. Maybe it's sitting in meditation, letting it go. Again, this is getting to know yourself and finding out what your brand, how does it function? What pieces of the other, resources actually work for you to be able to move through these.
And they're also telling me, like, also know that if you ask, be ready and willing for it to be delivered, and you don't even have to believe fully. Like, this could be an experiment, like, let me see, and that's great, and it will come through, and it doesn't need to also be some like turn my life upside down type of revelation. Like, you can at like, if you, especially if you're experimenting with it, like, okay, can we bring in something, can we create space, can I come into awareness of something that is going to help me, show me how this works, that is gentle and easy and flowy, and that's not going to, I know a lot of people can tend to, like, there's some trepidation around doing the work because it's in the unknown, and they're fearful that it's going to turn their life upside down, and it's like, no, there are those of us that have been there, done that, so that everybody else didn't have to do that shit. So,
Well, and the thing about it is you're not supposed to stay comfortable. Like, and that's a learning tool for ourselves as well. The more you start trusting and knowing you're being taken care of, which is the hardest goddamn part of this, doing the work aspect. But the more you can let go of it and you can surrender into more of it, because I'm not gonna lie, there is gonna be something that's gonna come up and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I really don't want to feel. Look at that. That seems like scary or uncomfortable, right? And yet you're asking to have it presented, but now you're trying to run from it again. Again, you might run from it a few times before all of a sudden you realize what you're doing, right? It's a practice for sure. It's not, it's just like when you went to ever go play the first sport that you ever played and you didn't really know much about it. And you got out there like, here's the rules, go for it, just have at her. It's just kind of something similar. You do have to practice it. It does take a little bit of time before you start refining your skills.
yeah, that's such a great analogy because it's like when you're a beginner, you're probably going to get some bumps and bruises and scrapes. Like
Oh
when you're
man,
when
they just showed me the funniest analogy. So you're gonna laugh. This is a real story. So when I first started playing volleyball when I was a kid, I was learning how to block at the net. And you know how many freaking people would be spiking this ball and damn near hit me in the face multiple times? Well, then it finally did hit me in the face. Granted, I got the block. I went back over the net and I got a point from it, but it hit me square in the face. And I can't help but feel like that is exactly what you're saying.
yeah, totally. It's like, I mean, even when you first go back to the gym and you haven't been in the gym, like you are sore as all get out for a good period of time. And then it gets better. Like the bruises go away. Like you probably never took it square in the face like that again.
Never again.
Like, and you're okay, you're safe, you survived, right? Like it's no big deal. And now you have the knowledge. You won't put your face there again. So it's
Didn't
fine.
feel great at first, but hey, exactly that. My vision came back. I was fine after, but And
Right.
that's the piece of it, the tenacity to keep up, get up and do it again. You know, it's like for all you lovely Canadians, that many of you grew up on farms or rode horses, how many times did we fall off the horse or get bucked off the horse? And yet we were stubborn and adamant to say, well, I'm going to win this one and get back on the horse, right? It's something similar. So if that helps you give a different analogy, if you weren't a sports player, you know, use those things as well, because that's what this is about too. But now it's just more of a battle with yourself than anything. And to be honest, that can be the hardest battle because there's no one else telling you something different. The horse isn't running away from you. You know, you're trying to figure out, are you going to stand there and stare at yourself in the mirror and decide to have an argument? Or are you going to surrender into the fact that there's actually something here that you just need to move through?
Yeah. And this is not even like, we're not even talking about the aspect of the ego.
No.
Because you will be in a battle with your own ego also. And that's some of the most painful, or not painful, challenging
Challenging.
pieces of it. And then again, it's like the point is not to get to like where there's no work left. Like that doesn't happen. Like there's always likely going to be some level, some deeper level, some more quotes work. It's just not going to feel the same, right?
It gets
Like,
to be easier
mhm.
because the more you decide to surrender and stay in flow with it, the less it builds. And so the less it builds, the more minor it feels when it's actually being swam through.
Right. And also, like sometimes along your journey, you decided to enter the fucking final tournament and you're going to have it, like there are going to be points and times where
Yeah.
you're basically leveling up, if we want to look at it like that.
Yeah.
You're going to the next level of your expanded consciousness. And that looks like some crazy ass tournament that you entered where it's all the best teams and all the best players showing up, and you're going to walk away bruised and maybe a little battered. And in this situation, your ego is probably going to be a little battered when you get to these pieces. But, like it's worth it. Like you chose to go to that tournament, you chose to enter it. And now you've been practicing all this time. You have all these skills, right? Like you're not going to get hit in the face like that again by the ball unless you choose that that's your only option and you're sacrificing your face to block the damn ball. Like, but you chose it because you're there to win. You entered the tournament, right? Like,
And you're aware enough now to choose whether you will have that happen or not, right?
yes,
It's the
totally.
truth. And that is the thing about it. We're not saying this gets to be a breeze and that there's an end game to this, because obviously, if there's an end game, you won't be here in your physical body anymore, if that was the case. But the thing about it is, yes, we've all planned out certain challenges or events that are going to happen in our life, no matter whether we're manifesting that or not. So it's because we're trying to learn something from it for ourselves or completing soul contracts with others. It's always about growth. And so no matter what happens and how shitty it might look or how challenging it might feel and how much emotion decides to come up with it, if you can keep an aspect of saying, there's got to be some kind of benefit for the highest good of all coming out of this, no matter how shitty this looks, promise you, you won't go wallowing down into the pit of despair that usually likes to try and take people. And the ego is like the first one to say, hey, like, I got puppies in the van. You want to come over? You know? So there's a lot of different aspects to this. But again, this is why we like using some of these analogies I love that they bring up, because it gives us a laugh. Because that's also, if we can stay in that higher vibration, have a laugh about it, it almost makes it easier and clearer to see through the bullshit.
Right. Well, and it's like, this is what we do. So when you're wondering, like, hey, what do the Danas do in a session? Like, this is the pieces that we're here to help you with too. And we do this in the community. Like, there are multiple ways to find and have resources, people, whether it's us or others, that are available to help you do this. So when you reach these, when you get tired of the ball hitting you in the face, come find one of us and we can help you so that it doesn't continue that way, right? Like,
And you get the choice now if you want to keep letting the ball hit you or not.
right. Yeah, exactly. Because we can only lead you to water as a horse. We can't make you drink it.
No, as much as some of us want to, shove somebody's face in that pond, we're not allowed. It's called free will, you know. And that is the other aspect when you start to do this inner work or you start doing the work for yourself, you will struggle probably a bit with watching others. because you'll start to see it, right? You're going to start to see through the shadows of themselves, through the bullshit they've created, or what stemmed from their own beliefs, right? And as much as you might want to throat punch them or drown them a little in the water to try and make them see, we can't do that, you know? So the best thing you can do is continue doing the work for yourself, create a higher vibration that no matter what people are not, whether they realize or not, some will be conscious of it, some won't be, but it will affect them in a positive way for themselves. They might not feel like it all the time, but do understand and know for yourself the higher vibration you choose to keep, the better it helps everybody else around you as well. So if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the other people that you love, because that was my motivation for a long time, doing it for
Yeah.
everybody else. Mhm.
Yeah, which brings up an interesting piece. So, and just without too much context, like the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So if you have to borrow somebody's confidence or their light or their whatever it is to help you do the work, like please do,
Exactly.
you
It's
know.
like, instead of faking it until you make it, borrow it until you make it.
Yes, yeah, and it's just tuning into their frequency
Exactly.
for a minute instead of being completely on your own brand and band. We're collaborating as brands. That's what you're doing in that moment, right? Like,
We're
and
not in competition with each other. We
no,
want to share our knowledge. We want to share the things that'll help others. So let's flip around this ass backwards structure on this earth and say we're not in competition anymore. We're here to grow with each other and be the unique puzzle piece that we're all meant to be, building the picture of what new earth is going to look like.
and think about that. I mean, there are major brands that collaborate, and I was asking for an example to explain this without using an actual brand name. And so you can think about there are various like characters out of movies and films and amusement parks, and those brands are collaborating with, say, sporting teams to
Mhm.
they're coming together and putting something joint out, supporting each other, promoting both sides, lifting both sides, right? Like that's what it
Yeah.
gets to be like from a brand perspective. Like, and those are just, that's not even counting the clothing brands that we could throw in there, right? Like
Mhm.
collaboration also gets to be more than just two people. It's a collaboration, it's not a partnership, right? And
Exactly.
partnership should be the same way, people. It's not a competition.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be sacrificing from one side or the other just to make it work. That's a whole nother fucking topic,
Yeah.
which we'll definitely probably touch on at some point. But I think we're gonna leave, unless you got any final notes on this one. I think that's a really great place to leave this. And again, like we mentioned, this is part of what our session's about. And if some of you are always wondering about what the hell we talk about in a day, this is what we do a lot of back and forth. We're a lot of exploring, a lot of doing the things. How can we help not just each other better, but what else can we put out there for other people? So, number one reason why we partially started this podcast was to try and give as much wisdom as we could in different perspectives so people could take what resonates and leave what doesn't. So, if you want to join our community, we have lots of fun conversation in our community. It's growing, which we're super excited about, and would love to have anybody listening to this at any point in time come and join us if you wish. And if you have questions or anything, please feel free to reach out to either of us. And we hope to have you on the next episode.